Channukah Sameach, my dear Fleetwood community. There's an interesting halacha in Hilchot Channukah, and that is, as we all know, by Birkat Hamazon, during benching after we eat our meal, we acknowledge the fact that there was a miracle of Channukah. We after all say Al Nisim. What happens if you forget Al Nisim? What do you do if you forget to mention that paragraph? As we all know, you don't have to repeat benching. However, at the end of benching, when we get to the Rachamans, after we finish the main part of benching, all the different bachot, we get to the Rachamans, we get to all these different bakashot, these different requests that we ask God at the end of benching after each time we have bread. In that list, on Channukah, if you forget Al Nisim, you can add a Rachaman of Al Nisim. You got a Rachaman acknowledging the miracle of Channukah. It's a good little trick. It's a good hack. Good to know. It, however, begs a question. How is it possible that we can say a Rachaman regarding a Nis of Channukah? In its regular structure, where Al Nisim appears in benching, it is an expression of gratitude. Al Nisim is there, functions as a way to say thank you. Thank you, God, for doing this miracle for us when we needed it. During Harachamans, the structure is that of a request. We are therefore, by acknowledging the miracle of Channukah by Harachamans, not expressing gratitude for a miracle, but we are asking God to give us more miracles, perform miracles for us. There's a well-known Gemara that expresses how one cannot ask God for miracles. If someone's outside a city and he sees a house burning, he is not allowed to pray, I hope that's not my house. He could pray, I hope everyone's okay, but he cannot say, I hope that's not my house. The house is already burning. It will take nothing short of a miracle of God to prevent it from being his house if his house was the one that was burning. Similarly, a parent expectant with a child cannot pray to God, I wish it were whichever gender, I wish it were a boy, I wish it were a girl. The woman's already pregnant. Biology has already dictated what the gender of this fetus will be. You cannot ask God for a miracle to change the gender of the child. How is it that we're allowed to acknowledge the miracle of Channukah during Harachamans? How is it that we're allowed to ask God for miracles? There really are two different nisim, two different miracles that occurred during Channukah. It is perhaps best expressed by a famous question that has too many answers to potentially have been a very good question in the first place. But there's a famous question, and that is, why is it that we celebrate Channukah for 8 nights? After all, the jug of oil had enough oil for 1 night. The miracle was the subsequent 7 days. There was no miracle the first night. There was oil. The oil burnt like it would of any other night. Why celebrate for 8 nights? And of the very, very many answers to this question, one of them is that on the first night of Channukah, we are not celebrating the fact that the oil lit. We're celebrating the fact that a small group of vigilantes, a small family of Kohanim, were able to beat an empire. Were able to win a military victory. The first night of Channukah, we celebrate a military victory of a small family beating an empire. The subsequent 7 nights of Channukah, we celebrate the miracle of the oil lasting for 8 days, of oil that should have lasted for 1 day, lasting for an extra 7. Therefore, perhaps, when we say Harachamans, when we acknowledge the Nes Channukah by Harachamans, we are not acknowledging the second miracle. We're not acknowledging the subsequent 7 days of Channukah when oil that was supposed to last 1 night miraculously lasted for 8. we're celebrating a natural miracle, a nes tiv'i. It is of course possible that without the hand of God, a small family, a small group of people may have been able to repel an empire. It's possible. We've seen it happen to history, to people that were not Jews, to people that didn't celebrate by eating jelly donuts afterwards. It has happened. But we recognize that even though it's something that can be explained by natural phenomena, even though it's something that we've seen day to day, we recognize this natural miracle, this nes tiv'i, is something that we should acknowledge, and it's something that we should celebrate. That sort of miracle, one where we recognize the wondrous ways through which God works in nature, is a miracle you're allowed to pray for. I'm of course allowed to pray for someone to get better. Someone who's sick, I want him to get better. I'm not asking for a miracle. I'm asking for the medicine to work in his favor, to work in their favor. That's the sort of miracle we are asking for by Allah. That means as we've spoken about this many times before. Friday nights during our talks about Psukkah de Zimwa, during our talks about the thanking prayer that we give before Kirat Shema every single day, we've discussed how there's a fundamental difference between the sort of acknowledgement, the sort of praise that we give God in Psukkah de Zimwa versus that which we do in Hallel. In Hallel we thank God for miracles. In Hallel we thank God for splitting the sea. In Hallel we thank God for holding the sun in the middle of the sky. In Hallel we thank God for allowing a jug of oil that should have lasted for one night last for 8. But during Psukkah de Zimwa, during the prayer that we say each and every day, there we acknowledge the nes tiv'i. There we acknowledge the natural miracles. The fact that the sun rises and the sun sets. The fact that the ocean has water, that there's fish living in the ocean. The fact that our bodies work. The fact that we're able to experience our day-to-day lives. The fact that a small group of Kohanim, a small family, was able to repel a massive empire. The fact that when Iran sends a whole bunch of missiles towards Israel, not one makes its target. The fact that Israel is able to take down Hezbollah within just a short little while. We celebrate the nes tiv'i. We have to remember that on Channukah, that we are really acknowledging the nes of Channukah twice, each and every day. We acknowledge the nes of Channukah by Psukkah de Zimwa. We acknowledge the nes tiv'i. We acknowledge the fact that a small group of Kohanim won a war. And we acknowledge the nes of Channukah by Hallel. We acknowledge the nes of Channukah the subsequent 7 nights. We acknowledge the miracle of oil that was supposed to last one night, last 8. This is a fundamentally important message for us to take with us for the rest of the year. To allow this experience of Channukah, to allow spending 8 days thinking about the miracles that God did for us, and thinking about how it affects our day-to-day life. True, God does wonderful things. God makes oil last for 8 days. It's wonderful. It's beautiful. And we appreciate that. And we thank Him for that. And we take time out every year, a couple of times a year, to say Hallel and to acknowledge those things. But we cannot forget Psukkah de Zimwa. We cannot forget the nes tiv'i. We cannot forget the small group of Kohanim that was able to beat an empire. That's how we have to live our lives. That's how every day when we say Psukkah de Zimwa, we have to just take a moment, even just a few seconds, just to thank God for the nes tiv'i, for our day-to-day lives, for the fact that we're healthy, for the fact that we get to spend time with each other, for all of the wonderful day-to-day things that God does for us. Channukah Sameach, and may we all be zocheh to acknowledge the nes tiv'i in our lives.